Many are claiming that CSGO is a dying game, but is it really, and why is it dying? My name is Braden, and welcome to Valve Guides. Counter-Strike is possibly the biggest pillar and foundation of esports in the short history that gaming has created thus far, but with games like Fortnite and Rainbow Six slowly winning over a good portion of the player base, on top of the fact that Valve's support for the game has slowed to a minuscule pace, many have claimed that CSGO is on the decline and dying, while others point out that CSGO merely just isn't in its prime anymore, and we should be okay with that. Let's take a look into some of the reasons why people are claiming that CSGO and its players are a dying breed. Starting with number 10, we have lack of updates. With CSGO being one of the leading FPS titles of this generation, you would think that Valve would do everything in their power to keep their players happy and their game up to date. Although we don't know the surrounding circumstances, Valve hasn't really been pushing out updates as often as they used to. We only get a few a year, and that's just to make some decent balance tweaks to the game. And basically every time there is a big update, the community is outraged that it didn't change the main factors of the game, or it changed a main factor way too much. I'm looking at you, R8. This is something that Valve should improve if they do want to keep their community as happy as they can, because the game has lost a good amount of its player base just due to the fact that the game isn't changing very much. Although the flip side of that is that the game doesn't need to be changed very much, and Valve is focusing more on esports than its main player base, which is understandable, but players aren't going to be happy about it regardless. At number 9, we have the trade ban. With the recent update of the 7-day trade ban for all CSGO items, Valve has been getting a lot of backlash, and understandably so, because they're trying to conquer the gambling scene. They've tried to shut down many sites, and they killed a big portion of the trading scene alongside the gambling scene. I know the trading scene has always been seen as a good part of CS. It's one of the things that made it as popular as it is today. With the gambling portion, that's going to open a lot more of a debate. Personally, I don't really like the idea of a 7-day trade ban on every item. It's just tacky. But it's definitely something that we should look into more and become more educated on. At number 8, we have lack of communication with the community. CSGO has a huge player base, and it used to be much larger. And with that kind of player base, taking notes from developers like Blizzard with Overwatch, communication with the community is essential to keep the community happy and on the side of the developers. Valve has next to no communication with the community, and this really affects on how happy the players really are. All it takes is a look into the Overwatch community to see how much they love the Overwatch devs, even when they do something that they absolutely hate. So with this, when the community is outraged with an update coming out or something along those lines, not only are they just straight up outraged, but they feel like their voice doesn't matter, which in turn makes them even more outraged, and it all just feels useless, and then that's how you lose players. At number 7, we have adding things that weren't necessarily needed. Valve has made many bad updates in the past, including the Wild West with the R8, so when there are big issues with the game like the netcode or tick rate, something along those lines, and they come with a massive overhaul for the gun sounds or new guns, it's understandable why the community gets pretty darn frustrated at this, because with that it can feel like that Valve is bringing out updates for the money grabbing rather than actually improving their game and the foundation of it, so you end up with things like stat track weapons and music kits that aren't really important whatsoever. I get the cosmetics of the game, but when you're adding a ton of cosmetics to the game or adding new sounds or guns or whatever, and you're not actually fixing the base problems with the game that people have been complaining about for years, there needs to be an explanation. If there is a reason why they're not fixing some of these mechanics, it would be helpful to communicate that, which goes along with what we said before. All the outrage is there, and there's seemingly no reason for it. At number 6, we have cheaters. Cheaters are a very big part of why CSGO is on the decline for a lot of people's opinions. And this is just due to the pure amount of hackers in the game. You know what? I'm not going to call them hackers. I'm going to call them cheaters, because about 99.7, I'm going to say 0.7% of cheaters in the game did absolutely no hacking themselves and just use an install program. But it's gotten to the point where cheaters even have their own community where they're comparing their hacks and figuring out who has the best cheats. While Valve has been trying to tackle this issue with prime matchmaking, it hasn't worked at all. I mean, whatsoever. it hasn't worked. At number 5, we have hitboxes. Hitboxes have been a problem ever since CSGO came out, all the way back then. I mean, it's been over 5 years. Valve has been dealing with this issue and has improved the hitboxes, but they're still not that great. And again, there have been multiple updates in the past few years trying to fix this issue. Mostly they've been somewhat successful, but it just seems like it's a problem that CSGO can't really shake off. At number 4, we have the space between operations. With operations being a major part of CSGO and basically the biggest changes that you're ever going to see throughout the game, it's a big part of the growth of the game itself. And at the start, there were about 3 to 4 operations per year, whereas now there's usually only 1 a year. And again, there's no explanation or communication from Valve on why the space between operations has been increased so greatly, but we just hope to see more operations sooner rather than later, because that's the biggest variation you have in the game. You have new game modes, co-op, new maps. It's an exciting time every time there's a new operation in case. But again, if only 1 operation is dropping a year, how are you going to keep players engaged with the game for a year straight with just a little bit of variation? At number 3, we have majors. With majors being the pinnacle of the pro scene, it's had an important role within the growth of the game itself. And again, just like with operations, this is the pinnacle of that portion of the game. So with operations, it's the pinnacle of more casual players in the game, not even necessarily casual players, but with majors, this is the pinnacle of the people that are really into the pro scene of the game. And we used to get 2 to 3 majors per year, and now we're lucky to get 2. This is the most action-packed, important time for CS fans of the pro scene, where anything can happen. And things have not even just stagnated, but things have just slowed down. At number 2, we have 128 tick servers. Boy, I remember talking about this like 2 years ago, if not more. Wait, when did I start? 3 years ago. 4 don't know. 128 tick servers have been requested by the player base for years, and they have yet to be implemented into the game, and again, with no communication or comment on why this is the case. They would be a great implementation for Valve and would really make the community happy. Without this update, the servers of the game will continue to grow further and further into being outdated. The funny thing is, I think it was the beta of CSGO had 128 tick servers. We had the best servers before the game came out, y'all. That's not necessarily the case, because there's a lot more to servers than just tick rate. We still want 128 tick servers. It's 2018. It's about halfway through 2018. Please. At number 1, we have a panorama UI. I think performance is at one of the main cores of CSGO and Counter-Strike and competitive PC gaming as a whole. And the panorama UI is something that has been hinted for years, but has still not been implemented. Essentially, it's going to be like a main menu overhaul. It's going to increase performance. It's kind of confusing as to exactly what a panorama UI is, but from what I've read thus far, at its base, it's going to increase performance. And it also opens up an opportunity for first-party implementation of things like ESEA. But yet again, we have no communication or comment from Valve as to the timeline of a panorama UI and whether or not it will ever be implemented. I think with that, we've come to the core issue of everything in this video, is that we don't know anything. People don't think CSGO is dying necessarily because there's no updates or because there's no 128 tick servers. It's because we don't know why there isn't. If there was a good explanation as to why, if there was communication with the community as to why all of these things are the case, maybe the player base would be at a higher peak than it is right now. But with all that being said, we still don't know. We don't know what Valve is doing. We don't know if they're making a new Counter-Strike game. We simply do not know. So it's hard to get angry, but it's hard to be happy with these things at the same time. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end portion. My name is Braden. I listen to a lot of Childish Gambino right now, and I will see you in the next video.